lovely friends, it's Margaret, and today we're going to be talking about what I will be reading for Vaultathon. One of the points of Vaultathon is to keep it low-key, and I feel like I have been making my readathon TBR lower-key every year. The first time I did 4 books, the second time I did 3 books, and this time we're doing 2 books. Will I stick to 2 books? I don't know. Who knows? I like to pick up like 6 books during a week and start all of them at the same time and never finish any of them, but that is a me problem and you didn't come to hear about that. I will also be bringing a couple of recommendations for each prompt for those of you that are still looking for some last-minute book recommendations of things you can read to fill out those prompts. And don't forget, you are encouraged to combine as many of the prompts as you need to get all of the prompts finished, and we've made that especially easy because if you read the group book, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, you will have hit all 6 prompts because they are all covered by this book. This is the one book that I am for sure going to read this week because I need to discuss it, and it's been a couple of years since I read it. Whenever Muse of Nightmares came out, that was when I last read it. Was that 2018? I think that was 2018. I am not entirely sure on that, though. This is about Laszlo Strange. He is a librarian who ends up being taken across the desert to figure out what is going on in this city that everyone thought was a mythical city until people from the city showed up at Strange's doorstep. We do have a reading guide set up over on our Goodreads group if you want to be reading specific sections along with other people and discuss them. Go ahead and check out that link in the description box. Also, if you have read Strange the Dreamer recently, Muse of Nightmares also counts for all 6 prompts because it's still dealing with a lot of the same things. Now, if you have been following my channel for any amount of time, you would know that I do like to have an audiobook on hand because I listen to it while I'm at work, while I'm doing stuff around the house, all of that stuff. I don't know, this probably will not last me the entire week because it's a pretty short book, but I am going to be reading The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender by Leslie Walton. This is about the mystery of Ava's family and why she has wings, because she just, for random reasons, has wings, and no one really knows why, except we start to learn going through her family's past why. It is supposed to be, this is a very interesting book because it's very polarizing. A lot of people like it, a lot of people hate it, so I'm interested to see where I fall on that spectrum of things. Before we move on to the prompts and my recommendations for each prompt, I do want to remind people that if you are reading a book that fits these prompts and it carries on into next week, it counts. It counts. If you are currently reading something, it counts. There are like almost 0 rules for this readathon. So the first prompt is obviously Atlantis, and that is to read a book that is about the search for something that is lost. So the first recommendation that I have for you is Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is about Karoo. She has been raised by these mythical creatures called chimera. They're not quite human, but not quite animal. And then one day, her home, everyone she knows, they all go missing. She is stuck in the human world where she has been going to school, and she's like, wait, I need to find these people. And so she spends a good chunk of the book looking for where they are because they are lost. The next book that I want to recommend is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I love the Lunar Chronicles. It is amazing. You should read it. Even if you don't read it during the readathon, please just read it to make me happy. This is a retelling of Cinderella, and it involves Cinder, who ends up meeting the prince and getting invited to the ball, and there's a whole random set of circumstances, but the way she meets the prince is that he's been searching for this lost princess, and he has an android who has information, but the android is broken, and Cinder is a mechanic, and it's a whole mess and story, but that's how they meet. It's kind of actually rather cute, and they hit it off really well, and I love them so much. Sorry, I got real intense there, but I do love them so much. This is one that, like, I will say you probably want the second book close by because there are so many things that are not wrapped up in this book, but they're not wrapped up for a reason, and that's because it's a whole thing. It is a whole thing that takes 4 books and like a gajillion pages to get through, but it is also very good, and the way Marissa Meyer does weaving storylines together, she's just a master at it, and I love her. The second prompt is Milo Thatch, and that is to read a book with an underdog protagonist. My first recommendation is This Time Will Be Different by Misa Sigura. This is about CJ, and she and a bunch of other students around her who are people of color and of Japanese American descent end up in this kind of tug of war with their school, which is named after a man who took great glee in buying up all of the Japanese businesses back when the Japanese were interned during World War II, and so there have been lasting repercussions for people like CJ's family who really had a hard time getting back on their feet when her grandparents were released from the internment camp. So it's about that. It's about her struggle with a lot of other things, her identity, how she feels, like her self-esteem. It's a really good story, but she is definitely an underdog protagonist because there are so many things stacked against her. The next book that I want to recommend is about the underdog of all underdogs, my sweet bean, my cinnamon roll son, and that is My Hero Academia. It's about Deku, and he is what is known as quirkless, which basically means he cannot be a superhero. In our world, that probably wouldn't be a big deal. However, in Deku's world, like 80% of people have superpowers and are able to go and be superheroes if they would like to be. And it's his greatest dream. And then he meets All Might, who is, in fact, a real-life superhero, the greatest superhero that, like, is known in his world. And All Might has a solution to Deku's problem and helps him get into the Superhero Academy. It's great, it's amazing, and it's wonderful to see this kid who is given this gift go, okay, I'm going to learn and use this gift the way it's supposed to be used, but he is definitely at a disadvantage from his peers. And it is wonderful watching him navigate that and learning how to deal with that and learning how to make his power work for him and finding inventive ways to use it. I love him so much. If you don't like him, I don't think we can be friends. The third prompt is Shepherd's Journal, and that is to read a book where the plot is influenced by books. I'm going to recommend The 10,000 Drawers of January by Alex E. Harrow. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. It's about January Jones. She grows up in the 18-somethings, like it's after slavery has been abolished, before, like it's during Jim Crow. That whole part of American history that we like to pretend didn't exist, it's during that point in time into the history, and she is a biracial girl who's living in that time. She has been taken in by an older white man because her father works for him and he takes care of her, and she's basically kind of one of the oddities in his house full of oddities, and then she discovers this book that gives her, like, opens the possibility of other worlds to her. It is a very good book. It's gorgeous, lyrical writing, and I love it so much. I will say, if you're looking for own voices representation, this is not it. Alex E. Harrow did a lot of research, but I do know there are certain issues that people feel she didn't handle well. I think that she handled them as well as you can when you are a white author and you're not trying to tell someone else's story, but you also want to acknowledge what happened to them. My second recommendation is The Reader by Tracy Chee. It's about Sephia, and she has a book, and she can read this book. And in her world, not many people can read books, and so people are after her, trying to get her, because not only is she important because she can read the book, but this book apparently is rather important, and so they're trying to kill her and hunt her down and get the book back. And she is running away while also still trying to protect this book because apparently it was very important and her parents died for it. The fourth prompt is Leviathan, and that is to read a book that reimagines mythology in a practical or real-world way. Y'all knew it was coming. If you did not know it was coming, where have you been? Hi, my name is Margaret. I'm obsessed with Percy Jackson. Do I need to say any more? This is about Percy Jackson. One day, he discovers that his father is a Greek god, and it ruins his life. He ends up running from monsters and dealing with the fact that his mother has disappeared, and the fact that everyone thinks that he has stolen this thing. This is my second favorite series in the world, and the only reason it is my second favorite series is because there's a sequel series, and that is my favorite series in the world. And I know people are judging me for that, but you know what? Stop it. The next book I want to recommend is The Goddess Test by Amy Carter. I'm not entirely sure. The name will be on the cover that is right here. This is for all y'all Hades and Persephone hoes, because it is a retelling of the Hades and Persephone mythology. I love it. This was the book that kind of got me into, oh, okay, I like this, actually, because Hades is, in fact, not as awful a dude as Greek mythology paints him, or people seem to think he was. If you actually read Greek mythology, like, he was actually, in fact, not that it is saying much, but he was the best of the three brothers. I mean, when you have Zeus and Poseidon who are continually cheating on their wives and messing stuff up, it's not hard to look good, especially when all you want to do is just make sure that the dead don't go crazy. The fifth prompt is Empty Buildings, and that is to read a book that discusses imperialism or colonialism. I'm going to recommend for the first one, Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. I love this book, and it definitely imperialism, right there, the entire thing. This is about Mare, and she is from a people, her father is a governor, but her mother is from a people that is very oppressed under the current empire that's doing really well with one side of her family and not doing so well for the other side of her family. And so she ends up getting caught up in this thing because she has a magic that is intrinsic in her mother's bloodline, family, something like that, and she ends up getting caught up and being basically kidnapped and forced into a marriage because they want to use her powers. This was such a good book. It's beautiful, it is immersive, it has one of my favorite, not favorite, but it has a very fantastic romance. Like, this was amazing, and it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. It is beautiful. It is slow burn. The next book I want to recommend is Let's Go Swimming on Doomsday by Natalie C. Parker. Natalie C. Parker has worked in Africa for about a decade, and so she came back and wanted to write about what she was seeing happening with this organization called Al-Shabaab. This is about Abdi, whose brother was abducted a few years ago by this terrorist organization, and then some Americans approach him and are like, hey, your brother is pretty high up in this terrorist organization. We're going to kidnap your family and threaten them, so you will go and spy on your brother for us and tell us what's going on, what their plans are, and help us prevent this attack. And it is a very, very, very difficult book to read. It is awful. It has to deal with child soldiers, but it also is very poignant. It is very educational, and it's really eye-opening, because a lot of the things that Abdi is being told while he's with this organization are things that a lot of religions will say, and a lot of religions will use to kind of manipulate their people. And so it was just interesting to be drawing conclusions between what he was hearing and what I have heard in, like, Sunday school. This is a very complex, complicated book, and yet that ending, yes. So the final prompt is Heart of Atlantis, and that is to read a book with a mystery at its... The first one I want to recommend to you is one that I finished recently. A lot of these are ones I finished recently, but I want to recommend The Other People by C.J. Tudor. Holy moly, was this a mystery. It was heart-wrenching. It was amazing. It's about a father who is searching for his daughter who went missing years earlier. Everyone has been telling him that she is dead, that she was murdered with his wife. However, he knows that on the day of the murder, he saw his daughter in the back of a car driving away from him as he was headed home. This is just about him and his search for that, and it was amazing. I loved it, gave it 4 stars. The other one I want to recommend is also a mystery, because that just makes life easier, and that is Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This is about Stevie Bell. She goes to this really super elite boarding academy where the kids are kind of encouraged to follow their passions, and her passion is a murder that happened at the beginning, at the opening of this Ellingham Academy place thing. Did I say boarding academy? I meant boarding school. We mixed some things up, okay? Whatever. Anyways, Stevie gets there, and she's investigating this old murder, and then a new murder happens, and so now she's investigating an old murder and investigating a new murder because she's kind of an expert in true crime and those kinds of things. Why we're having a teenager investigate this murder? She's like Nancy Drew in it. It was really good. It is definitely one that leaves on a cliffhanger ending. It's definitely one that's part of the series because, oh, there are so many unanswered questions in this book. And that's why there's a second book and a third book. Those are all of my recommendations for Vaultathon Round 3. I hope you found something interesting to read here. Make sure if you are doing a TBR that you tag me on Twitter and let me know what your TBR is, because I would love to watch what everyone else is going to be reading for this readathon. Also, don't forget we have the movie night on the 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and the live show, which we will be deciding the time at a later date in the next couple of days. We haven't decided it yet just because I've been coordinating with the co-host, who I will have all up here and linked down below in my description box. If you are participating in the readathon, go ahead and talk to me in the comments. Let me know what you will be reading for this readathon. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, hit that subscribe button if you're already here. That is it for now, my friends. Happy reading, and I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things.